Fuck yes! Welcome to After the Hype with me, your host, as always, Bryan. I am currently sitting in my car in traffic, which is great and very LA of me. And I figured it was a good time to say, hi, let's talk about the month of June, aka our Origin month. Throughout the month of June, we'll be releasing our first ever appearances on After the Hype, starting, of course, with the first episode, where Nick and I sit in his bedroom and bitch about video games, specifically Deadspace, on a Nagra. Heads up about the Nagra recording, not the best. Might be some audio hiccups here and there. But I promise the rest of the episode is still a lot of fun and it's a good time. Then moving throughout the rest of the month, we're doing Chewy, John's, and Ryan's first episodes. Even though Ryan is stepping down as permanent co-host, we're still throwing him in there. And it should be a lot of fun. I know, going back, I've had a ton of fun listening to all these things. It's really cool seeing where we are now compared to where we were then. And man, it's just been a blast. And it really makes me want to say, thanks. Thank you for all of you who've been listening this whole time. I can't believe it's almost been 5 years. And for those of you who are just tuning in now, thanks. Thank you so much for listening. This is a lot of fun. I hope you keep coming back. And then, although we are not recording throughout the month of June, we are still very much active on our website, athpod.com. We're still doing our Spotify playlist every week. We are still doing our Guess the Movie game. We're still writing articles. So check our website out, athpod.com, as much as you can. There's still new stuff going up nearly daily now, and it's all really fun, cool, movie, geeky stuff. I could not be more excited about it. Speaking of things I'm excited about, starting in July, we have our brand new co-host starting. She's been on a few episodes before. You might recognize her. I'm not going to say who it is, though. I never really know what to say in these opening monologue things. That's why I usually just don't do them. But given that the rest of this month's going to be a little different than what we usually do, I figured it was a good time to do one. Anyhow, first episode of After the Hype, Deadspace. Here we go!
So do you want to start it off this time? Because I think it started off last time. Okay. So this week we've changed the name of the show, but it won't really matter. But we've decided to call it After the Hype because we're going to be reviewing a lot of older games. So games that we've played, that we've liked or disliked, that we can talk about and kind of talk about them as objectively as possible because it'll be a few months after the hype has died down.
A few months, years, however long.
Whatever. We might go back to games that had no hype to begin with because we like them, that we might just want to talk about just because they might not get enough coverage, anything like that. Ideally, we'd like to do all different types of games, but I think it depends on how much we can talk about them. You know, because I think that it's hard to talk about a game like Spelunky for 30 minutes, just because there's just not really enough that I can think of to talk about.
There's nothing to talk about Spelunky.
Brian hates Spelunky because it's getting in the way of me trying to catch up on Mass Effect time. But it's a good game. It's got some goofy stuff. We might talk about it when it comes out on Xbox Live Arcade, because we could play it together. It's going to have co-op and stuff like that.
I'm not going to play that game.
It looks fun. Okay, so this week we're going to end up talking about Dead Space 2 predominantly, but I mean, it's hard not to talk about Dead Space 2, it's hard to talk about Dead Space 2 without bringing up Dead Space 1. So I guess let's just go over the plot for both, and we'll end up probably diverging at some point, but that's the plan for now. Dead Space 1, you are a silent protagonist. You kind of dock with a mothership that's a mining ship, and then everything goes wrong. And I mean, like, thematically, it's similar to Alien, and Dead Space 2 is similar to Aliens.
Well, it's like the first one was like they focus a lot more on the first one than they do the second one. But the reason you're sent out there is because you're like a mechanic.
Right.
And the ship has stopped reporting in, so they send in the mechanic to go fix their audio or whatever the fuck is wrong with their stuff. And then the second one, you're just a crazy person who happens to be a mechanic.
Right. You've survived. I mean, which is similar to Alien.
It's very similar to Alien,
yeah. You know, Ripley is... She's a doctor or something like that, right? She's not like she's definitely not like one of the combat people. So she's kind of thrust into a situation and she thrives and survives.
Well, that's what I kind of like. The comparisons are a little bit more even to where the first game was legitimately scary to the point to where I had a friend who wouldn't even finish the game because he said he got so creeped out. Personally, I'm not the type of gamer who gets freaked out by like the jump scares that you get from like Doom or things like that. For me, it's like Silent Hill 2 or like Resident Evil's 1, 2, and then they got shitty. But like the ones where it's more like you against the elements, which Dead Space did a really good job with. Yeah. But at the same time had the jump scares. Whereas then you have Alien, which is very solo person, kind of scary, and then you have Aliens, which is just not even a horror film at all. It's just a straight up
action film with a few jump scares, but it's basically,
And that's the exact same for Dead Space versus Dead Space 2, because Dead Space was kind of a survival horror game, and then there's Dead Space 2, which is a survival horror game where there's no survival because you're going to win no matter what.
It's an action game with survival horror controls.
Elements.
Right. Which is kind of the frustrating part, because you're really trying to fit a square peg in an octagonal hole that it could probably fit into, but like it just is really rough. Like it's not a good fit. Yeah. So.
Okay, starting at the... Okay, so we have the setup to where, like, the plot was, you're a guy, you're a mechanic, you go and you basically start fixing shit around the place. Right. You show up, you're like, your entire team is killed within the first 30 seconds of the game.
Yeah, there are, like, 2 survivors.
Yeah.
You included in 2 other people.
Yeah, and, like, you show up with, like, 30 people, and then you're on, like, hey, go turn on the lights, and you leave the room, and you turn the lights, and just shit breaks out, and everyone dies.
Right.
And I'm sure most people play the game by now, so they know all this, and then you go through the ship, and meticulously, kind of almost annoyingly at times, you fix the ship section by section to the point to where you kind of go, oh, there's this marker things, and there's unitology, not Scientology, unitology, and like this really kind of like big comment, and it actually has a lot of really good ideas in it. Sadly, all those ideas are stuck and tucked away in these really epically long text things that you have to read after you beat the game, and it's just kind of...
Well, I like finding that sort of stuff, and I like reading through it. I kind of liked you could enjoy that game without any sort of the environmental story stuff.
That's true.
Although it is weird that logs are just kind of thrown along the floor, but I mean, it's the same sort of thing where like, oh, well, what if this guy breaks... it's the same with GoldenEye problem. It's like, what if this guy breaks into our fort? Well, just leave ammo out for him. Hey, what's the worst that could happen? So it's kind of weird, but it's okay. Yeah, it doesn't ever really take you out of it.
The only thing that kind of bothered me with that is that a lot of games do this, and Dead Space is the first one that comes to mind for me right now, but there's like, Mass Effect does this a lot too, actually, to where you have 2 types of logs you can find. You can find a log chock full of text, which is where all like the legitimate story and that sort of stuff is, and like to where if you actually want to find what the developers wanted to make with this world, you'll find it in these long texts. Or you can listen to audio logs, which are boring and useless, and they just kind of get forgotten.
I feel like they did a much better job of the audio logs in the first game, and I couldn't remember any of them in the second. Which is crazy because I played the first one when it came out, basically. Yeah. Same with the second, and I remember the audio log stuff from the first. Because I don't even remember anything in the second game at all.
No, not really.
I mean, like, there were some really cool ones where it was basically telling you the story of how the ship fell apart. Yeah, which was really cool. In the second one, they really give you... There's... The way the first one is set up is there's... Not only is it a mystery to find out, like, what these monsters are, but it's a mystery to find out what happened. Like, where you basically have the beginning and the end. Trying to find out the end, and you're also trying to find out the middle. Mm-hmm. In the second game, you have basically all the pieces... Which I can't really fault them for, because it would be fucking impossible to do the same sort of thing. You can't have that same environment in both games, where you're trying to figure out what's going on, unless you change, these are now new aliens, which would be hokey and dumb. Yeah. Why you'd want to continue that sort of thing. Yeah. But like, for the second game, there is no kind of mystery of what happened. They really give you all the information you need to know at the very beginning of the game.
Well, okay. Sorry to jump back, but I want to finish this plot thing. So yes, that's how they kind of do it. So then throughout the first game, you eventually get to the end where there's a marker thing, and you have to basically... I don't even remember how you destroy it at the end of the first game, but you kind of destroy it and whatever.
I'm not even... you destroy it because, like, the ship blows up that it's on, or something
you crash on the Earth, and you want to put it back to where it came from, and then you kind of destroy it, and there's a big monster thing, and the easiest boss battle ever.
Oh, it's like the easiest final boss.
Yeah, and he picks you up, you shoot him in the face, and it's over. Yeah. and then you get on your ship, and then you're flying away, and all of a sudden there's your zombie wife, and she attacks you in the game.
And then the game ends. Yeah.
So then the second one picks up kind of where the first one left off, to where
which is really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, like this really cool montage action sequence, and then you wake up in an insane asylum on the Sprawl, which is this big, epic space station, and then literally within moments of waking up, your doctor gets killed, and then you're in a straitjacket.
Such a cool opening.
And it's so, like, the first, 20 minutes of Dead Space 2 are some of my favorite moments of any gaming. It was so intense, and you're in this straitjacket, so you can't attack anything, but things can attack you, and you can die in that straitjacket, which I didn't think was possible, but on replaying it, just to see if you could, run the wrong way, you will die.
Instantly. They don't give you any leniency. I mean, they kind of do guide you along the right path, because they do a really interesting job. With Dead Space 1, it's you're at this ship after everything's gone haywire. In Dead Space 2, it's you're in the shit, basically. Like, you're in the middle of it going down. And that's really cool because you're there to see it fall apart. And, they guide you on this path where all the monsters are basically chasing somebody else. So instead of feeling like you're the only target that's really available, you're kind of watching everyone else be put in the same situation you were put in the first game, which is really cool because you're just like, oh, thank God. Like, you're just running along this straitjacket like, yes, please don't notice me. Please don't. And as you're running along, which is really awesome because it felt great because that's how it probably would feel in that situation. Oh, yeah. You don't have any weapons. You're basically just hauling it as fast as you can, just like, don't notice me, don't notice me, don't notice me, and you don't. Which, if you play it correctly, you probably won't get noticed. I think that some things will jump out at you, but you can just run.
I mean, basically, you almost have to do what I did, which is go back and purposely fuck up if you want to die.
Exactly.
Which is totally what I did. But then basically you end up meeting up with a friend who cuts you out a straitjacket, and then you jump into, I don't know, a tube of some sort that they just kind of have lying around. Right. And you don your armor, and then the actual game starts.
Right. Which, I mean, like, you did do some exploring to kind of give you more of a hint of what was going on. Yep. And you find out that it's similar to what happened on... and I cannot remember the ship's name that you were on in the first place. But
Ishimura.
Yeah.
Ishimura. USS Ishimura, yes.
When you were on the Ishimura, it was... You got a lot of the clues, and the way they give you the... you got... It's similar to that, basically. Like, it's, they're being experimented on, they found the marker, and they're trying to use it as something.
Or power for the Unitology, not Scientology. For the not Scientology religion.
Yes.
Unitology.
Which is fine. I mean, like, it's... I don't see why people wouldn't want to use a power source that could kill them. That seems totally normal. But it makes sense within that world because the world is basically set up like... All of these colonies seem to be incredibly isolated. Mm-hmm. So it would be like if basically I had two neighbors... And we knew that something was dangerous, and I had found out that a friend of mine was doing... Like, let's just say, like, there's a plant that could kill you. It's the ruins, basically, but in a small 3-house little area. And I found out that a friend of mine was taking pictures of it. I would be like, no, seriously, this is not a good idea. Yeah. You would take it with a grain of salt, but you'd be like, what do they know? So I feel like it's kind of taken with that sort of idea that the mayor of this thing knows that it's somewhat dangerous, but he feels like he can corral it. Mm-hmm. And in a weird way, they do a better job because it seems like they've had the marker for a lot longer.
They had to, because, like, especially the way they set up the game to where, like, you were seriously fucked up from your events in the first game. Right. Which you totally would be. Exactly. You saw so many people die, you killed so many people and whatever, so there's really... They don't do a good job, and I don't mean that negatively at all, because I don't think they mean to, but they don't set up time at all to where how long has it been.
Right.
I mean, I think
you're probably for the best.
Yeah, because there's really no good way to answer the question, so they do kind of like what really good sci-fi movies do, which is you just don't answer it.
Yeah, you just ignore the question, but you don't ever bring it up either, so it doesn't ever call attention to it.
Exactly, unless you're doing something like what we're doing right now.
Exactly. Which is fine, because it never really felt like they were trying to hide anything. It just wasn't important. Right. Like, what does it matter if it went 5 years or 50 years? Like, you're still there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, it's fine. But I think the biggest change from the first one to the second one is that you can talk.
Yeah.
Which
you shouldn't.
I really don't feel like you should. I think you could have told that story the same, whether or not he talked. I don't think it impacted the game positively.
Well, I mean, it kind of... So, the first game you have to where he is the silent protagonist, the strong silent type, to where he pushes the plot forward by you're experiencing through him.
Yeah.
Whereas when you give him a voice, it kind of takes you, the player, out of it a little bit.
Yep.
And it could have been done in the way of like Halo does with Master Chief, to where if there's a cutscene, he might slide a word in here or there, but he's never going to say much. He's still the strong silent type. When you play Dead Space 2, Isaac's a chatterbox, and he's a foul-mouthed chatterbox, where he's just, fuck, a lot. And it's just kind of, I didn't really need it.
And the weird thing is you've established in the first game this really cool idea, and they do it really intelligently, and then in the second game it gets scrapped.
Yeah.
I don't see the benefit. I don't see the point. Like, I just don't see the point. Like, it didn't seem like to bring anything good to the table.
Well, from what I know from the research that I have done in the games, and this is all from before the game came out, I haven't done bullshit research for what we're doing right now, short of looking at my laptop 20 minutes ago.
Right.
But I remember, like, the main things that the people behind the game, which I know it's EA, and I don't remember who else is. It's a lot of people who put this game together.
Oh, it's like a really specific Visceral game?
Visceral, yes.
Yeah.
Like, the major thing that they had was that they were really upset by the fact that people wouldn't finish Dead Space 1. They're really annoyed that people thought it was too scary. So I know by giving Isaac a voice, it takes you out of it a little bit, because it gives you another aspect. Like, I don't know why, but it makes it a little less scary. And I think, and like, it was that, and then they really wanted to do moments to where you're overpowering everything around you, which they didn't do as much as they originally set out to do, which I'm glad, because I wouldn't want that.
I hated those parts in that game.
But yeah, they still were annoying.
Later, but
by giving you like that moment of like, I'm a fucking god and you kill everything, which is annoying in a game like this, but I can understand how their mentality of we want people to finish our game and see our story through beginning to end, why you would put those in there.
Which makes sense. Like that kind of makes me feel a little bit different about it. I still wish that it wasn't there, but I understand why it's put in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I really want to talk about the set pieces in Dead Space 2, because like now that we're actually we've progressed through the story part, now we can actually start talking about like each and every one of the story beats in the second game.
Yep.
They have some really cool set pieces, and I feel like they don't utilize all of them well. Like, you go from the cathedral area, which was terrifying.
Was the cathedral where the kids show up the first time?
Yeah, the kids, not the babies. The kids.
The kids, like the ones that'll show up like 20 at a time, kind of around with claw hands and that shit.
And they're so flimsy, but which is great, because you can just mow them down, and it never feels like it feels more like a horde, which was really cool, because you never really had that feeling in the first game.
No, it's usually like one or two. Like at the end of the game, you get a whole bunch, but like in the middle, it was never that.
And the cathedral comes up pretty quickly, but you kind of have progressed enough to have a few guns at this point, and they don't take anything to kill, but it's great because you can easily get overwhelmed. And it did feel legitimately scary.
Oh, yeah. The only thing that I would say, and this is just, again, throwing back to like the change in the difficulty of the game, especially in the cathedral, is that if you weren't playing the game on hard or very hard or whatever, if you're playing on normal or easy, the game just throws ammo at you like it's candy, which is, they should never do in that.
There is no gray area.
No.
And I know it because I had to switch from... I can't remember if I switched from hard to normal. I probably switched from normal to easy, to be completely honest. But like my problem with normal wasn't even an ammo problem. It was simply the controls really don't allow me to do what this game wants me to do, which is kill off a bunch of these, like the stronger enemies at the same time. And I clearly either didn't level up the right gun in order to do that, or
you just level up the machine gun or die.
And that's so frustrating, because the machine gun was so worthless in the first game.
Yep.
And some of the stuff that I liked to be able to do in the first game wasn't even killing them. There was one of the grenade launching sort of guns had like a pulse that would shoot out, and you would shoot things away, and it was hilarious to shoot something away and just see it like fly off in the distance and then land. But I feel like they toned a lot of that stuff down because, like you're saying, they did want people to beat the game. Yeah. And people, if they had not played the first one, then they would probably gravitate more towards the machine gun.
Again, yep.
Which makes sense. I just don't... The machine gun was so worthless. It was good for one boss fight, and that was it.
I didn't use it. I never used a machine gun in Dead Space 1, but Dead Space 2 it was my best friend.
See, and that's... I don't know if I like that, because part of the thing I liked about the first game with the weapons was, like, each of them had a purpose.
Yes.
And I didn't ever feel that way with the second game. I did feel like some guns were clearly stronger than others, but they just didn't seem to... It didn't seem like this gun is for kind of this, but you can also do a few other things with that.
Well, the major thing that I found from just the weaponry, and then we'll get back to the set pieces. Sorry to go on tangent again, but in the first game, they really set out to try to make it like organic weapons, to where like it was the plasma cutter. It wasn't the plasma pistol or anything like that.
Right.
It was a tool that you happen to use as a gun. Right. Which, granted, if you watch the anime or any of the stuff about it, like, well, we all carry plasma cutters, which kind of took away from it a little bit. When the game first came out, it was a really like organic, like, I'm going to use this thing that we use for mining to kill things. And it was really it was cool that you just kind of pick up and you had your workbench and you kind of change it to be a weapon. In the second game, they still had all the same names, but it's like, oh, this is your gun now. Yeah. Look at this other guy's carrying the same gun as you. It's like, oh, we're all carrying guns. And they kind of took away from it a little bit, but that's kind of one of those minor complaints that only a nerd like me would go like, I want my tool.
But it is, they did, like you said, what you said makes a lot of sense, where they just changed it to make it more accessible, which is completely understandable, but it just kind of takes away from a little bit in small different areas, like what we liked so much about the first game.
But I mean, it's the same mentality that almost every game system's going for right now. It's like where like Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are known as the hardest games ever, then 3 comes out and it's like a breeze, but everyone can play it now. So it takes, but that's where a lot of the games are going, which is why I like Dead Space 2. Like, and I do like the game, but there's a lot of problems, which we're definitely getting into.
I think that like
you got to find the balance,
right? And I think that they haven't quite found the balance yet. And I also think that video games are kind of in this weird area that movies were in a while ago, where I think that what you'll end up seeing is EA would, let's just say 20 years from now, would probably take a franchise like Dead Space and let it breathe on its own, where it's going to make its money, but it's not going to be a huge hit.
Right.
And you will have those huge hit sort of games. Like, you'll have the Call of Duties and the Halos and the Modern Warfares, which all make a lot of money to help fund some of the smaller games.
Yes.
So, which is, in a really, really simplified sense, how kind of the Hollywood system works.
Oh, yeah. But that's also why, like, games like Dead Space 2, which should be, like, a smaller kind of horror, like...
It really should be more of a niche game.
It gets shoehorned into being this, like, blockbuster, which it wasn't, but, I mean, it still made way more money than I think anybody expected it to.
Which is good, because I am excited for them to do a third one, and I'm hoping that some of the things that they learned from... Because they clearly learned some things from the first to the second.
Yes.
Like, they learned that, like... I mean, the claustrophobic sense that you have in the first game is not a big part of the second game. Well, no. Which I kind of like, because you went from what was a ship with all its lights off, which had to look creepy anyway, to what was essentially a city that still kind of worked. So when you went through the cathedral, and you went through the nursery, and then you went...
fucking sucked.
I didn't like the nursery either, but I loved the cathedral, and I loved, like, some of the outdoor stuff.
The outdoor stuff was really good.
It was so much better, and they improved all that sort of stuff, and that was kind of... I mean, I still love Dead Space 2.
Yeah.
It was just like, it could have been so much better. Like, it could have been so much scarier, and it really wasn't. And that's okay, because I realized about halfway through that it wasn't scary. The only problem that I have with that game that's like a legitimate complaint is the fact that there really is no gray area, like you're saying. Yeah. It's either too easy or it's too hard. And by too hard, I mean that the controls don't allow you... Like, when we were talking about, like, you send hordes of enemies at you, there's a specific room that I remember where that's what it is.
Yes. Is it the train station where the girl who gets her eye jabbed out is on the top balcony and she's like yelling at you to kill everything? Oh my god.
Yeah. And it's terrible because the controls and the controls and the guns don't allow you to do what that game wants you to do. And the only way to survive that was to simply, and I'm not joking, to run in a circle around the whole room, hope that you don't get hit, and then when the door opens, you just run through the door.
I kind of went for a figure eight technique.
Yeah.
To where, like, every time I'd get to, like, one of the opposite corners, I'd shoot whatever was chasing me, then I'd go back in the figure eight.
Yep.
And it kind of worked.
And that's not fun. Like, it was so far into the spectrum of not fun at all that it was just like, it was more frustrating than anything else. Like, it wasn't worth... I almost felt like it felt more like a chore. Like, it felt like the game was like, okay, here's the part where we have to do... It was the same problem that Arkham Asylum had, which was like, okay, so what are we going to do here? Well, this isn't going to really work.
Shit ton of guys at you.
Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do a horde area, and that's all you're going to have, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And that wasn't fun. That wasn't fun at all. It wasn't... enjoyable. It wasn't interesting. None of the enemies were new, so it wasn't even that. They were just simply recycled. Like, you're just going... It was like somebody had, like, a bag that was like a grab bag, and it was like, here you go, just dump it out. When you dump it out, you're just like, I have all of this stuff. Like, it just didn't seem worth it. So, I don't know.
Okay, so Cathedral. We're done with Cathedral. You get through that whole thing. And then, I don't remember where you moved to after that.
You move through more of the city, and then I think you go through the nursery after that.
And then the nursery, I hated the nursery so much because little baby exploding things that crawl after you.
Oh my god. And they really do sneak up on you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Somebody brought this up and I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. I think this was on the Giant Bombcast that they said that the big problem that they had with the nursery was just kind of like, oh, really, babies? Like, it just seemed kind of like this is like done for shock value.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, I agree with that. I think looking back, I was like, I didn't really remember them. They weren't interesting. Like, the kids were really cool.
The kids were
like
great.
And that was the best part of the nursery was when you went into the auditorium.
Yep.
And all the kids started coming out and you were like, oh, God damn it. And in a good way, which was like oh, shit. Like, I can't believe, like, I really hope I have enough ammo for this because I don't think I do. Like, and that was the best part about that game was they would throw you into these really cool set pieces, but then you'd have to trudge through some really fucking dumb ones.
So the really fucking dumb one that comes to mind for me, especially because it was the demo that was released like a month before the game came out, which was like I think 8 or 9 chapters into the game, to where you're in the freezing level. To where
I don't remember
the
that.
only part
you're in the freezer?
Yeah.
And
the freezer, like, I just remember getting really excited for Deadspace 2 because there's so many things I love about it. I love the lack of there's no HUD display throughout the entire thing.
That is so cool.
And they do it all so well that you're like the health and the spine, everything's so great. And I start playing this like this freezer level to where it's just like you can just see everything coming at you in this most scripted way that was just like, I'm not excited for that game at all. And then so you get through that whole thing, you get through these big shootouts, and then you get to this point where you think you're doing fine, this monster drops out of the ceiling, and it's the best, like, oh shit moment I'd ever seen, and in the demo, that ends right there, and it's kind of annoying. But in the game, you have this, oh my god, this will be such a great boss fight, and it's a quick time event. And Deadspace doesn't do a lot of quick time events. I mean, granted, quick time event is, it's not like an actual, like, press A, press B, but it was like one of those, just like as you're getting dragged away, just shoot at this thing. And it was kind of a letdown because I was really excited for that part. But I mean, at the same time, they weren't going for gameplay at that point. They're going for cinematic, like, surprise. And I think one of the things I like about Dead Space, but also kind of hinders it at times, is that it really tries to do a lot of gameplay versus cinematic experience, which is really what all video games are trying to do right now, except for, like, Dark Souls and Fez, which you're playing right now. And
I love Fez.
And, like, so many, like, a lot of games just aren't doing, but a lot of them that, like, there's a really tough medium that people are trying to hit right now of movie mixed with game, which where like it's they're kind of basing games off of the movies that don't exist. And this one did a lot of like Dead Space 1 didn't do it so much.
They had
Dead
a
Space
few
2
sort of
does
things
a lot.
And some of them are really good though.
Like the one where you get shut out into space.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Holy God, that was great.
And the way, because it's not even a quick time event. Nope. What it is it's like, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of this, but basically it's like a Earthworm Jim when you would ride through the tube.
Yep.
That's basically what that area was, but it was beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And the ending was so cool. Like, you landed like fucking Iron Man lands in all those movies, and you're like, that was me. Like, you're like, I did that. I did this. And you wanted to show everybody that one sequence. Because it was so cool.
I quit the game, restarted my save, and called my roommate in just to watch that one part, because it was so fucking great.
And it was fun, because you were, not only were you involved, you were engaged, and everything looked great. And it wasn't like you're being dragged along, and you have to just kind of move your arms around and shoot something, which was part of the thing in Dead Space 2 with the train. There was another sequence like that with the train thing, and it wasn't fun.
Nope.
Because it's not... when you fail, you feel like that was bullshit. You didn't feel like you messed up. You just felt like the game just poked you in the eye and were like, do it again. And you're like, oh, God, I don't want to.
It's kind of like, do you ever play God of War 3?
No.
God of War 3 has a part where you have to fly up this tunnel, and it's kind of like that sequence, but there's so much shit in the way that can just kill you instantly. It's just like, I don't want, like, that ruins the entire cinematic experience. Like, make it hard, don't make it impossible.
Yeah, and that's the thing. With the cinematic experience, I think what they're slowly finding out is, I don't want to have to do that again. Because not only do I have to sit through a bunch of crap that I can't skip, which is always really frustrating playing a game, but it's also, I have very limited control.
Oh, yeah.
So when I die, I feel like it's just dumb. And it's not fun. Like, these really hard, limited control things aren't interesting. If you do them well, and I think that Uncharted 2, I haven't played the third one, but I do think Uncharted...
If you've played 2, you've played the third one.
Okay, so 2 and 3, they have some really cool cinematic things, and there's only really the ones where you're chased by a car that are kind of bland.
Yeah.
And even those aren't hard. They're just kind of like, oh, well, I'll do this. This is kind of fun to look at.
Yep.
But that's the difference, is that like they're always engaging. They're not ever... The cinematic sort of set pieces are always fun. And I feel like with Dead Space 2, they don't nail all of them. They nail 2, maybe?
They nail enough for me to still say I like the game.
Exactly. But they don't... And the thing is, they don't even make the other ones... bullshit. They just make them... It's like if you graded all of them on a scale from 1 to 10, 2 of them would get like a 10, and the rest would get like 3s, 4s, or 5s.
Yeah.
Where they're not like so dumb or bad that you feel like that was a waste of time.
Right.
They're just something you have to just trudge through begrudgingly with your eyes closed and just being like, please don't screw me over this time, because it's not fun.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that I think that they'll slowly figure it out. And I do think that I'm for them doing more of them, because the 2 that they do really well, or the only one I can really think of at the moment, which was the space one, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, I would be fine with playing a whole game where you're just flying through space like that.
Oh, yeah,
and I could land that way every time, and I just felt like I legitimately accomplished something, even though I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
It's really not hard, but it is just so cool to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that's what you have to nail. Like, you have to, if you're taking control away from somebody, you have to make it look and feel good, and that's the biggest thing.
Oh, yeah. So moving on, because we've just talked about another set piece, which I'm sure we're way out of the actual order of the game.
I'm sure
I haven't
we
played
are.
it in a while, but we both liked it enough to actually want to talk about it. The other thing that I'm going to talk about now, it's not exactly a set piece, but it comes up quite often in the game because it's Dead Space. It takes place in space.
Right.
Zero gravity. Now, zero gravity in the first game, I think, was handled better. I know a lot of people disagree with me. I love zero gravity in the first game.
It wasn't
I think
bad.
It's handled so great to where I think it was actually like a legitimate way that they took a lot into like thought process of how would you handle zero gravity in the future and this and this.
Yeah.
Which is where you'd have the magnetic boots that you could turn off and you launch to something else magnetic. And that's how you'd be able to get around the space. And it did a really good job of anytime you'd land on something, the entire area would now flip to wherever your feet were at, and the whole world felt like fucked up, and you had to get your bearings again, which got kind of annoying for certain puzzles, but annoying in that way of that's how it would actually be. It would be that jarring of where the fuck am I now?
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really good at that.
Yeah.
The second game, which was really proud of this, which I hated, which was it took away that magnetic atmosphere, and you basically just kind of flew. And you flew in this really sort of cheesy way, which these thrusters on your hips and your shoulders, and you just kind of go whichever way you please, which just took away everything that I liked about the first one, because now the world never felt that disjointed, because all it took was a click of right 3, and you just magic yourself back to how you're supposed to be standing, and it just was, it took away a lot of the really cool parts of it for me, and just made it basically turned it into what I hate most in video games, which is underwater levels.
I'm gonna disagree, because I feel like it made sense. Like the suit that he has in the second game is clearly better, and I would totally understand him having limitations in the first game that he doesn't have in the second. I didn't mind the outer space stuff. Some of it I kind of liked, and from what I remember, the reason why I kind of liked it was because it took away your... No, it didn't. I don't think it took away your air. I think I'm just remembering that.
No, that's still both there.
So, but it wasn't an underwater level because like the controls was so much better. Like it wasn't like Mario in an underwater level where you had to
That's
like
a side scroller. You can't know.
No, I don't mean like I'm talking about like Mario 64, where like when you had to churn, you had to watch Mario in the goofiest position slowly turn his body, and then like press A, and you're like, shit, I pressed it too early, and now I have to like stop and reposition myself again until you really got more of a handle of how shitty the controls were, and then you were able to do it.
But at the same time, this is fucking PS3 and Xbox 360. Of course the controls are going to be better now. It's still, the entire concept of zero gravity while floating around in spaces is underwater. That is an underwater level.
Let's put it this way. I disagree because I don't think it was bad, but at the same time, I can't fucking think of any of the outer space parts that were any good, besides the one where you're just shot into space.
Yeah, that part was really... Because the one that I always remember, I think, was actually in the demo, too. I played the demo way more than I played the game, which is the problem. But, like, I just remember, like, there's this big puzzle to where, like, there's the gravity thing, like, the gravity engine that you have to turn off, and now you have to float around. And it's kind of like...
okay, so I guess the thing that I liked about the second one was it didn't feel like you were strapped to the ship like you were in the first one, which is fine. But the thing that I liked so much about it was I actually got to explore space.
Okay.
Is that fair? Like, I disagree with the controls and stuff. I kind of understand where you're coming from with the underwater level, but it felt so cool to be able to, like, fully explore these areas without hindrances.
Okay.
At the same time, I did really like the zero gravity stuff in the first game. Yeah. Because there was some really cool shit. I love the way they handled sound with that in the first game. Both of them. And they did it with both, but it felt more visceral in the first game because you really were just stuck to the thing. Yep. In the second one, you could very easily
float away from danger.
Yeah. And so it kind of took away any sort of the I hate to use the word danger again, but it really took away any of the stress of it at all. In the first game, there was like the one level I can think of is like the arms rotating, and I think it's the actual like gravity thing. It did something. I don't remember what it is, but it's a giant arm rotating. And there are enemies that will pop out, and the first time through, you don't notice them because you're so trained to hear the stinger, the violin, just like, what? And you're like, oh, it's somewhere, and you're like looking around. You don't have that in those zero gravity levels. You're on your own. Yep. And I kind of like that. As much as some people complained about the stinger, like I enjoyed it because it felt like a movie, and it felt like I was involved in this movie. But at the same time, it never took away any of the fright, and it made sense. Like it was like, okay, it made it so I don't feel like the game's constantly just trying to punish me. Right. And in the second game, I don't even remember if they have it. They do. I know they do.
They changed it a little bit, but not very much.
But it's not as noticeable, but it's still there. Yeah. But in the second game, you just feel like more of a fucking boss hoss, which you probably should because you have the experience.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
If somebody was like, oh, if we were drafted into Battle Royale right now and one of us won, if we had to go a second time, we'd be better at it than any of the other ones would be. So I kind of understand that sort of mentality because you can't really make the controls like feel better, but you can give him slightly stronger weapons to make him feel like, or make the enemies a little bit weaker to make him feel like he's experienced more. So this isn't, you need more stuff to make him to make you as a player a little bit more afraid.
Okay. Moving on to, I like how I just kind of like, and go.
Look, Brian. Yeah. Fuck segues. We don't need them.
So we've talked about some of the set pieces and stuff. This one, as opposed to the first game kind of had side characters who pop up in a little bubble next to you every now and then.
Right.
This one had characters which you would actually interact with. Yeah. Not like I think you have like one scene where they're actually in the room with you, but for the most part, you had two characters that were there the whole time. You had the character who was going through the same sort of mental bullshit that you were, and then you had the Michelle Rodriguez badass girl.
Right. Yeah.
And then at one
For some reason I was confused because I thought we were talking about the first one. I was like, who goes crazy in the first one? No, I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, so you have this guy who eventually stabs the girl in the eye with a screwdriver, which is intense. Yeah. And then the fourth character which you have, which is your wife from the first game, but she comes to you as like an evil ghost thing. So
and you're not sure if she's evil or not. Like,
I mean, her eyes turn white and her mouth turns white. She screams at you. It's kind of obvious. Yeah. Until that point later on in the game when you go, "I'm sorry," and she goes, "Oh, it's okay now." And then you're friends. Then you're not, and then
you're not only your friends, you're besties.
Oh yeah, you are best friends.
She has 8 guns, and she's no. I'm just kidding. Yeah. She doesn't help you at all. Ugh.
But yeah, so I liked The first game, I hated the characters. I hated everyone because I thought they were completely useless. You had the black guy who was just kind of like always screaming at you to do. Like,
yeah.
It's because they had no way to interact with you. Which, granted, this goes back to should he talk or should he not talk. By having him talk, he can interact with characters, which gave him a little bit more life.
Sure.
Whereas in the first game, they just keep shouting at you to do things. It's like, oh, shut up, man! Just let me do my fucking job.
They didn't handle it very well, but I still like the captain. I did want him to survive, but he dies.
Everyone dies.
Everyone dies.
Everyone fucking dies, except for the girl who gets the screwdriver.
And the thing is with the first game with the characters, like you said, I don't really have any sort of fondness for any of them.
Nope.
And the second game, I do kind of have a fair amount of interest in not only the girl but the guy, because that really did feel like more of a mystery than anything else. Is like,
why is he so fucking nuts?
Not only why is he so nuts, but is he so nuts that I can trust him, or I can't trust him, or is he kind of just on the far, is he chaotic good, or is he chaotic, so, like how what's the scale here?
Yes.
And I think that's the really good thing. They did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like when he turned, I was like, yeah, I could see that coming.
Yeah.
Like, even as a character, Isaac, and as the player, I felt like,
left him alone in the room with that guy.
Oh, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like Job in Arrested Development. It's like, I've made a huge mistake. Like, that's what I felt like when I walked back in there. I was like, oh. But you know what? Like, that's part of the best. That's part of the best. The really good part about both of those games is the writing of. It's like the pacing, I should say, of that game. They do a really good job, and they do a much better job in the second game with the characters.
Yes.
And we were reading the dialogue, and it sounded terrible. It sounded really bad, but I don't ever remember feeling that way while playing the game. So it's the delivery kind of makes up for it, where it is interesting. Where, like, you do feel like, as much as Isaac is kind of annoying, I never felt like, in a weird way, I wanted to do something sadistic so that he would die.
Yeah.
Like, I never hated him.
No, not at all. It didn't really make me want to start like a new segment on this where we read out of context dialogue, because video game dialogue is always hysterical read out of context.
Let's do it. Let's do it next week.
The exception of like Portal 2, which is great the whole way through.
The whole way.
But that's because you have Stephen Merchant, who's fucking amazing. Okay, so anyhow, I'm trying to move this along as quick as we can to try to get to the end of this game, which was a very tremendous, big ending. So
it really was.
Yeah, you get to the point to where you're that guy goes nuts, stabs a girl in the eye. You eventually kill him. I don't remember why, but now your friend.
I don't even remember how. But
I don't remember how, but you kill him. But whatever.
I don't remember.
Apparently, it gets unimportant after he stabs you in the eye. So then you, now you're friends with your wife again, you're besties, and she's saying the only way to destroy the marker, which has killed everyone, is just kind of absorb yourself into it and then destroy it from the inside. I think that's it. I could be a little bit wrong. It's been a while since I played the game, but that's kind of how I understand it.
Right.
And to do it, you have one of the most cinematic and one of the biggest controversial scenes in the entire game. I think it even won GameSpot's like most shocking moment of the year that year. It was like a really big thing to where you basically have to stab yourself in the eye.
Yeah.
And I was a fan of this part. Nick was not.
I wouldn't say I wasn't, but I mean, like, fuck. I barely remembered that when you brought it up earlier, which is not a good sign, I feel like, for something that's supposed to be that impactful.
See, that was for me like Heavy Rain's cutting off your own finger, to where like that was one of those moments to where like I really remember it, because it was such like it was clearly the only reason it was there, like the finger cutting, like Kratos jabbing his eyes in the god's eyes.
Zeus?
Not Zeus, it was Poseidon.
Sure.
But like, so there's these moments in games now, like in the violent games particularly, to where they're so over the top and extreme. The only reason they're there is to be over the top and extreme.
Exactly.
And Deadspace was really memorable because of how easy it was to fuck it up.
It's true.
Like, I think I did it probably about 15 times to where, like, and then kind of like how you said you did the first time, we're like, all right, so you need to put the needle in the eye. And you just jam the whole fucking machine all the way through your head.
There's nothing left, and you just watch him struggle, and well, I guess I'm going to have to do this one again. This screen slowly goes gray, and you're just like, well... All right. Well, I guess I shouldn't have been so reckless.
God, and like it made it even worse because like, all right, well now I know not to be a little too gung ho with this.
Right.
I'll go a little easier, and if you take your time with it, the thing fucking breaks and jams all the way through your fucking head again, and it's just like, oh god damn it.
Yeah, you have to find the sweet spot.
Yeah, and like that was one of those things that we were talking about earlier with the launch into space, to where it's like, oh my god, it's so awesome. Don't make me do it 20 times.
Yeah,
there's only so
many.
At
the same time, like it never, because there's a weird payoff of just being like, oh my god, every single time. But at the same time, it is a train wreck. It is quite literally. It's oh my god, like you just really every time you see it happen and you fuck it up, you're just like, fuck. Like it really does make it. It puts a fair amount of stress in you because like it is such. A visceral sort of moment that you do kind of you don't want to fail, and every time you do fail, you really do feel like you've really screwed up. And you feel like
there's no minor fuck ups.
Exactly.
You're watching it like I'm not joking at all. If you haven't played the game, which you should, but if you haven't, you literally watch like this entire machine just go plummeting through his head. It's like the most violent thing I've ever seen in a game. It's just like holy shit.
And then when you did it, you actually felt like you accomplished something.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good.
And then you feel like you accomplished something, and then he stands up and just kind of rubs his eyes like, oh, that sucked. It's like, you just had a fucking, 10-inch needle in your eye. You're not walking away.
Yeah, I love the science that they don't explain of that whole sequence. It's like, yeah, no, it's totally fine. It's like putting a needle through the top of a balloon. And you're like, no, that is not at all. It's an eyeball. It's a huge difference. Oh my god.
Okay, so anyhow, still trucking along so that we don't keep everyone here way too long.
We did skip something. When you go back to the Ishimura.
I completely forgot about going back to the Ishimura.
That is such an awesome moment. Because the whole time... So if you haven't played this game, it really does do an excellent job of harking back to the first game, which was you're sitting there on the Ishimura and you're going through, and this whole game you're constantly getting shit thrown at you. Like there really isn't like a sequence in which you're kind of going along hoping that something doesn't come out because you're just expecting it at this point.
Yeah.
And
not to say that's a bad thing, because I actually kind of like that part of it.
I did, because
you're in a fucking city where everyone got turned...
Exactly. So
there's
you're
no
going to have
shortage of death.
Right, you have plenty to deal with. But the first game, there were tons of sequences where there was nothing that's going to come out at you. So if you know that, and you're playing through the game a second time, you can just hustle right through, because you're like, well, what the fuck do I care? But... playing through it the first time, there's tons of sequences where you're just waiting for something to come and nothing does. And going through the whole Ishimura thing, nothing jumps out at you the whole time. And it's way scarier playing through the Ishimura in Deadspace 2 because you're expecting stuff.
Yep.
And you're constantly getting more and more nervous because you're like, oh my god, like if I'm not getting anything now, like it's going to be terrible in 10 minutes. And, you never get it. Yep. And it's amazing. Like, it was such a cool set piece.
Yep.
Nothing else to talk about with that. It was just a really cool sequence in which that did such an amazing job.
Which clearly, we play games differently, because I remember all the action bits, but the part with nothing in there completely just left my mind.
But it's so good, though. Like, it really did. It was so necessary, and they did such a good job with it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was happy that it was in there, and it made sense within the story. It didn't feel like, it's been about, 7 or 8 hours of you playing this game. You should probably go back to the first part for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt way better.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay, now back to what I was doing.
Back to what you were saying, sorry.
Back to what I was saying. Okay, so we get to the end of the game, which is, for some reason, you've agreed to go along with your girlfriend, keep in mind, Isaac's kind of nuts. Granted, the eye thing through the head is supposed to make you a little bit more sane, but you're still seeing images of your dead wife. Right. Clearly, you're still not all together, but your character is like...
It's supposed to give you, the keys to getting better.
Yeah, it's like, you can now connect to this thing, and you'll be A-okay, and you can destroy the marker. And then you get up to the marker, and, oops, your wife is still batshit crazy, and she just made you apologize to make you feel better, I guess.
I think that the marker knows that it needs you.
Yes.
So it's using you to get there, so that way it can be even more powerful.
Yes. So for the marker to become full powerful, it needs to basically consume all of the makers. And because Isaac was on the first shift, he's considered one of the makers, along with this other guy that did all the experiments on. And after he killed himself, the marker consumed him at some point that we didn't see.
Right.
But, so now you get up to this thing, and that's where we actually read the dialogue, which is I believe the best phrase in there was, not if we consume you first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you basically have to kill your dead wife, which is... Oh, quite a phrase. In this really kind of lame action sequence to where it was...
Well, from what I remember, the mayor of the thing of the whole place shoots you, you have to kill him.
Yeah.
He puts a javelin through your leg or something like that, and you have to kill him, and then that's when you have to fight your dead wife. Yeah. And so you have to fight her, and you have to kill her, and that boss fight is just as unmemorable as the first game's final boss fight.
We completely forgot something again in the classic R fashion. One of the major things that
we really are forgetful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We should actually probably replay the games before we talk about them
for next week. That'll be our promise.
I'm not promising that. These games take a while.
They really do. We probably should watch a gameplay, if there's a tool assisted speedrun or something like that. We should probably watch that just so we can get reacquainted with it.
That might help. I mean, the Wikipedias do help, but anyhow, I'm the one reading them, and I just fill you in on the side,
which works. So, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Fine. Anyhow, so after you apologize to the wife, and now you're hunky dory Isaac Clarke, which I still find his name fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it does. It's weird.
Yeah,
I feel like he should be Australian.
Yeah, he probably should be. Today might.
That'd be so good. If they just never explained it. There are random British people in space for no reason. So why not?
Yeah, I mean, the Doctor is British from Doctor Who.
Exactly.
Go explain that. Unless you're watching the season. Never mind, I'll stop. Anyhow,
I'm in the middle of it, Brian.
Anyhow, so you get to the point where you apologize, and then you have your friend who had the screwdriver through the eye, and she's like, Isaac, we can go take out the marker. And you're like, no, get the fuck off the ship. And literally, now you've become this good guy, and I don't know why you weren't to begin with, because you're kind of crazy. You get to the point where you take your friend, you put her on the ship, and you send her on a merry way. Yep. And then you go do everything that we're just talking about. But it's very important that you kicked her out, because now she kind of likes you for saving her life.
Right.
Not likes you like she wants to bang you, but likes you like
we might be able to be friends after all this crazy shit.
Yeah,
we could go to therapy together. That's basically what
we can go to Disneyland. It's basically what they're saying. And
Disneyland would be so weird after an experience like this. You would be so unhappy. The whole time you'd be like,
happiest place on earth, my ass.
Yeah, you'd be like, they don't even know what horror is. You would completely take that whole experience out of context.
For some reason, you snapped a picture with your phone. You just find the happiest child you could. Look at what this happens to people.
That would be so great. I would love to see just a whole 45-minute game of you just walking around Disneyland as Isaac Clarke, just being miserable. His character model doesn't look happy. He's got his head down and his arms, and he's just like this.
It's kind of like Charlie Brown, just kind of like.
Oh, that would be so good.
Anyhow,
so stupid. Okay.
Anyhow, so you kill your wife, you destroy the marker. I don't really understand how. And then this is probably my favorite part in the whole game, with the exception of the getting shot out the window space, which we can't talk enough about. But I love the fact that at the end of this game, everything's crashing down around you, and Isaac goes, "I'm done." And he just kind of sits down and just expects to die. Just kind of well, I've done what I can.
Yep.
And it's a really kind of he understands his lot in life, but then you need a third game. So then that girl that I made sure we mentioned comes back and saves you in this really kind of lame, you run through and you kill everybody, and then you jump out and land on the ship and fly away happily.
Yeah. But I mean, you need you said, you need a third game.
You need a third game.
But that was a really cool moment, because I did feel like that's how you would feel. It would be like if somebody threw a grenade at your feet after you had just killed a whole group of terrorists as some sort of soldier, and one of them, as he's dying, drops a grenade, and you know that there's no way you can get out. You wouldn't just be you wouldn't look up at the heavens and scream no. You would simply look at it and just go, shit. Or you would do something, something equivalent, where you would just be well, at least I did. You're somehow content in the worst possible situation.
It's very Ghost Protocol, mission accomplished.
Exactly.
Yeah. For those of you who can't see me, which are everyone but Nick, I did the full Ghost Protocol, when he stamps his hand on the briefcase and screams everything, just so you get the full experience of that.
Let's not delve into that movie, because
this will be one of those situations where I love it and Nick hates it. But anyhow,
it was okay.
So anyhow, this is again kind of like how last time with Arkham City, to where I got to the end of the game and everyone said the ending is great, and I got to the end and goes, I think it'd be better if.
Yeah.
And so Arkham City, I did the whole choice thing. This one I think it'd be a lot better if you let him die.
I kind of agree. I mean, but it's one of those things where, okay, so let's just say this game was made 20 years from now instead of now.
Yes.
and EA kind of embraced the fact that it's like a niche game,
Yep.
they would have ended it there.
And that would have been such a great ending of just him sitting down going, because like we just talked about Disneyland, he's not going to Disneyland. Like the rest of his life is fucked. Like he can't
terrible.
do shit.
He would be better off dying.
Yeah.
He really would be, just as a person, which is terrible to say, but if you've seen somebody basically plow through, a city and a ship as big as a city, just like all the denizens are dead. You have nothing to look forward to for the rest of your life. You're constantly going to be looking over your shoulder.
I mean, take like you or me. If we were to see like your girlfriend, if we go once we get done recording this, and she turns into a necromorph in front of us, to where like her bones jut through her arms into Naya's, her fucking insides turn inside out, and then all of a sudden she has swords for arms.
Yep.
Like her face turns inside out. I'm done with life after that. Like, even if we're aiming
just one.
Yeah,
that's all it takes. Is just
one. Like, even if we were to defeat it, like, you shoot the limbs, not the head, and we kill it, and like, hooray, it's over now. We've just gone through 0.5%, not even a 1/3% of what Isaac Clarke has gone through, and we're both just like, well, fuck life. I'm done with this. Yeah. And he's gone through it twice.
Yeah,
like
twice. Not once, twice. There's
twice.
No way. There's no way.
Him sitting down at the end of that game going, fuck life. Much better ending than Michelle Rodriguez flies in and he hops on and now they're all hunky-dory. And then you have that... I do kind of like the nod to the third game after the credits to where they're like, that dick, he destroyed the marker. And then you have this random, I think she was called like the Overseer. She goes, well, I guess we'll have to activate the other one then. And it was just
like... That's such a B-movie thing, which is why I kind of like it, because they do kind of play up the fact that it's basically a B-movie with an A-movie budget. That's what this movie is. Yeah. Or this game is like that. But it's like, I did like the fact that they kind of were acknowledging the fact that there's more to it than the first game, and now the second game's even bigger, and now the third game is clearly going to take place in this, shadow organization sort of thing, which is really cool.
Scientology, not Unitology.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fine.
I mean, Unitology, not Scientology, my bad.
Either way, nobody's going to sue us, so, and if they do, we've got no money, so...
I mean, there's nothing to sue. I'm just saying that they just didn't want to say the word Scientology in the game, and it was really obvious.
That's what they were alluding to. But I like that. Like, I did like, at the end of it, they kind of it went from awesome ending to kind of diluted a little bit to back to, okay, I'm on board for the third game.
I mean, granted, but at the same time, like Deadspace did this really well. Deadspace 1, not Deadspace 2, did this really well with their marketing campaign. I'm not sure if you ever saw it. They released this trailer that was the quote-unquote, and you should look this up on YouTube if you can, it's the Deadspace Grindhouse trailer. And it was like, I had no interest in the game whatsoever. I'd read about it in a magazine. I just kind of looked it up here and there. And I just went, that game looks, whatever.
Yep.
And then I remember seeing that trailer to where it had the really cheesy, Deadspace, you're alone in space. And this really clearly it's like a geeky white dude just kind of talking into his MacBook and just doing the best he can. But the trailer did such a great job just creating this B horror movie. You're gonna die 25 different ways.
Yep.
It's gonna be violent as shit, and it just made me buy hook, line, and sinker into this series. And by having the game end with that horror, I guess we'll have to activate the other ones. Then kind of brought it back to that B horror movie grindhouse thing that really made me go, yeah, I'll play the third one.
It's basically a B horror movie premise too. It's handled intelligently, because if I pitched this game to you, it'd be like, well, this guy goes onto a spaceship with a bunch of people, and the spaceship is basically, it's space zombies, but they're scarier than zombies.
Yeah, they have 9 strands.
Yeah. That's a B movie. That is a few steps away from Troll 2 status. As far as being just a good idea, just not the best execution sort of situation. But the difference is the execution is really, really good.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that they kind of call attention to it in as intelligent of a way that they could without making it hokey. Yes. They're like, well, okay, well, fuck this guy. That's it. I mean, that's basically... Yep. And it's, you know what? If I were the head of this organization, that's exactly how I would answer it. It'd be like, oh, okay. It'd be like if somebody was like, sir, your mansion burned down. It'd be like... And then in the back of my head knowing, oh, that's terrible. And then my second reaction would be, well, I've got 8 other mansions. So is it really that terrible? I'll live. I've got all the money in the world, I'll be okay. That's basically the reaction, and you're like, cool. I like that. I like the fact that it's just, who cares? Yeah. We'll just constantly put him through shit until he dies. That's it.
I'd say if you haven't played Dead Space 2 or Dead Space 1, pick them both up. They're both good games. You probably get them like...
They're super cheap because I know I picked up... I originally played it and then... Like, I played it at a friend's place, and I was like, I've got to play this game. So when I went out and bought it, it was the Game of the Year edition, and it cost me like $20.
Yeah, it's got probably...
And I know the Dead Space 2 one also has like a Game of the Year edition sort of thing.
And if you were to go on Amazon now and look for them like used, you can probably get both of them like as a pair for like $10, and they're totally worth every cent.
Totally worth it. Like, I would honestly say that both are worth $60. You're going to get your entertainment value.
Oh, yeah.
And what's weird is for a game that's a horror game, it has a fair amount of replay value because like the first time through it's going to be really stressful, and then they let you play it the second time through with all your guns, so you can have even more shit to just
and they don't do the fucking new bullshit to where the new game plus is now twice as hard. They just let you plow through it like you want to.
Right, which is a total stress reliever because all the stress in the first one you're like, I don't care, and you're just gonna truck through it as fast as possible, and you have like the guns that you have fully upgraded that are hilarious where you're just like, I'm not even gonna kill anything, and you just blow it away against the wall. The best part, I think it's in a second game where you have the javelin gun.
Yes.
The javelin gun is so much fun. I could play through that whole game with just the javelin gun and not even kill anything, just pin it to the wall and just run away and just be like, I don't care. Come get me. Ha! And just run. It's so... Like, that's the thing that I do like about that game is they don't hinder what you can do. They just are like, no, if you find an exploit sort of thing, enjoy the hell out of it because it's not going to really change the game. Yep. It really won't. Okay. And that's fun. So that's it.
So, any closing notes for you?
Go play that game.
Go play Dead Space 2.
Go play both.
Both of them are must-plays.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all we have for tonight. I don't know what game we'll be reviewing next time. Otherwise, this is probably another thing that we should probably start doing is look at the games that we're going to review next time.
My vote's for Portal 2, but I think we could do anything else.
I mean, there's a vote on the board for Portal 2. I want to do Red Dead Revolver, not Revolver.
Red Dead Redemption. I'd be fine with both.
Fucking blows.
Man, that game is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, let's end it there because we can't go any better. All right. Well, I will see you guys next week. This is Nick.
Bryan.
And we will talk to you at some point.